The Axeman of New Orleans. The Axeman of New Orleans was a still unidentified chronic executioner dynamic in New Orleans, Louisiana, and area, purportedly from May 1918 to October 1919, albeit some, including simultaneous ex-investigator John D'Antonio, estimated his range of wrongdoings started in 1910 to 1911, while some were persuaded it happened from 1915 to 1917 to 1920. These records were subsequently gone against by any semblance of genuine wrongdoing. Creator Michael Newton. First assaults. The principal assault credited to the Axeman happened the evening of May 22, 1918. Italian merchant Joseph Maggio and his better half, Catherine, both had their throats cut by an obscure gatecrasher, whom then continued slamming their heads with a hatchet he had tracked down in the house. Joseph passed on minutes after he and his significant other were found by his siblings, Jake and Andrew Maggio. Police found the horrendous garments of the killer in the house, proposing he put on something else prior to escaping. Andrew Maggio, whom functioned as a hairdresser, and whose straight razor ended up being the deadly weapon, turned into the great suspect, however, was at last delivered. A couple of blocks from the homicide scene, cops had found an enigmatic message chalked on the walkway. It read, "Mrs. Maggio will sit up this evening very much like Mrs. Tony." This was later deciphered as a kind of perspective to the supposed assault of one more several Italian merchants in June 1911, Anthony and Johanna Siambra. The last option was nicknamed Mrs. Tony by a portion of her clients. On June 27, one more couple was gone after in the evening time. Merchant Louis Bessumer and his fancy woman, Harriet Anna Lowe, were found, with head obtuse wounds, by a pastry shop cart driver. The two of them endure the endeavor. After the capture and ensuing arrival of an African-American suspect for the situation, Harriet, in what was considered a ridiculous episode, claimed that Louis was a German government operative. Afterward, she guaranteed he was additionally answerable for the June 27 assault. Bessumer was captured and later delivered. Due to the result, the press sensationalized the story. In the early long periods of August 5, Mary Schneider, a pregnant lady, was seen as severely injured by a dull power injury. The interloper additionally got a few bucks from Mr. Schneider's wallet. Mary professed to recollect a hatchet descending on her and afterward nothing more. The police, in the end, presumed that the deadly weapon might have been a light tracked down in her home, involving his casualties. Items as deadly weapons was likewise important for the Axeman Mo. One more suspect was taken in, yet at the same later delivered. On August 10, an old man named Joseph Romano was gone after during the evening. He was tracked down draining from his head by his two nieces. The latters were likewise ready to detect the interloper escaping, portraying him as a darker-looking, weighty-set man, who wore a dim suit and slumped cap. Joseph ultimately passed on 2 days after the fact of his injuries. This further assault caused moreover mania in New Orleans, with everybody dreading a home attack by the Axeman. On September 13, the Axeman evidently endeavored another home intrusion yet couldn't succeed, in light of the fact that articles were deterring his direction. The strategy for passage was equivalent to different assaults, as well as the designated casualties, merchant Paul Durrell Jr. also his loved ones. The initial 1919 assault happened on Walk 10 of that very year, in Gretna, another Orleans suburb. The casualties were merchant Charles Cortimiglia, his significant other Rosie, and their girl Mary. While the last option was killed, her folks made do. From the outset, Irlando Giordano and his child were blamed by Rosie Cortimiglia and captured on charges of the assault. Afterward, as Rosie abjured, they were delivered. The letter. On March 13th, a letter was sent to the Times-Picayune that read, Hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal. They have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, etc., but tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15, earthly time, on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse. Hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee, I have been, am and will be the worst spirit that ever existed either in fact or realm of fancy. The Axeman. The distributed text of the letter caused boundless frenzy. The evening of St. Joseph, Walk 19, New Orleans all's ballrooms were completely filled, and expert and novice groups played jazz at parties at many houses in and out of town. There were no homicides that evening. Last assaults. On August 10th, Steve Bocca, one more Italian food merchant, was gone after with a hatchet by a gatecrasher in his home. The horrendous deadly weapon was left in his kitchen. On September 3rd, Sarah Lawman was gone after either by the Axeman or by an imitator while dozing. Very much like Bocca, she was unable to recall that anything of the assault. Once more, the horrendous hatchet utilized in the endeavor was left at the scene. The last assault credited to the Axeman happened the evening of October 27th. Mike Pepitone, a merchant, was spotted by Pepitones killed by an interloper spouse. Modus operandi. The Axeman chiefly designated Italian outsiders or Italian Americans whom filled in as merchants, probably following them, before the assaults, for an unknown measure of time. The Axeman entered his casualties' homes for the most part by etching boards in their entryways and walls. He for the most part killed his casualties with their own sharp or obtuse articles, like tomahawks or axes, with which he crushed their heads and faces more than once, some of the time breaking their skulls. His mark was leaving the ridiculous tomahawks he had utilized on the crime locations after the assaults. He likewise utilized throat slicing and wounding. A few claimed assaults credited to the Axeman were likewise dedicated by shooting. Profile. As per onlooker records of survivors, the Axeman was a white common male in his 30s when the assaults started. From the straightforwardness with which he broke into some food and his utilization of a railroad shoe pin, a typical thievery device, the police reasoned that he was an accomplished robber. Wrongdoing examiners proposed the Axeman might have been a sexual twisted person whom explicitly looked for female casualties, as upheld by a portion of the cases in which the man was injured while the lady was killed. Essayist Colin Wilson guesses that the Axeman possibly killed the man in charge when he endeavored to ruin his assault on the female. John D'Antonio, a resigned investigator, was persuaded that the Axeman was a Jekyll and Hyde character, similar to Jack the Ripper. Out of nowhere the motivation to kill happens upon him and he should submit to it. A less conceivable hypothesis is that the Axeman carried out the killings with an end goal to advance jazz music, as proposed by the letter credited him.